Okay, lesson number 4, and here we're looking at cash flow. And this is just the first part. Cash flow is cash in and cash out. And really, if you don't get enough money coming into a business, you're going to go bust. Right, that's it. However, what you may find, and what a lot of students, a lot of business people find difficult, is you can actually be making a profit in your business. So your business can be doing quite well, but you have a cash problem, and if you've got a cash problem, then your business is at risk. So a good example of that is Cobra Beer, who were doing really well. He had created a fantastic brand. The company was doing well, making a small amount of profit, but had a massive cash flow problem, and therefore the company was then taken over. Okay, so there's two things a business needs to look at. Has it got enough cash to survive, and is it making money? Now, we've already done profit. Profit is the reward for being in business. If you're making money, you're more likely to attract more sources of finance. So in effect, actually, if you are making a profit, then it may be the case that your business may be able to attract more money towards it. Okay, but this is just the mechanics of a cash flow. And I'm going to give you some examples of a Unit 1 cash flow and a Unit 2 cash flow in a second. Right, so this is a cash inflow minus cash outflow. That will give you a cash flow. So here you've got £100 has come in, £200 has gone out. So during that month, there is a net cash flow of minus 100. And we always put it in brackets, that's just the convention that you use. In the next month, you've got £250 comes in, £150 goes out. So you can work out the net cash flow figure here. That is going to be 100. And the final month, you've got £300 has come in, £100 has gone out. So in this case, we've got £200 has come in overall in that month. But that's not the overall position. So the overall position is we've got minus £100 for the year 2011. Our opening balance, which is the amount of money you have at the start of the month, is also minus 100. So we end up with minus 200. Now, students always ask, what do you do here? In effect, what you always do is you're adding these two numbers together. Except here, this is minus 100, adding another minus 100. It's not like maths where you go minus and a minus is a plus. It doesn't work like that. So it's minus 100, you've got minus 100 quid, you owe £100, and you owed £100 at the start of the month, so you've got minus 200 quid. So the next month, the opening balance is clearly going to be minus 200. So the closing balance is always the opening balance of the next month. Now in this month, we've got £100 plus overall. We want to add this number on, but it's also a minus number. So overall, we're going to be minus 100 quid. So that minus 100 is then going to be the opening balance for the next month. Okay. And from there, we got £200 plus. Add that amount, but we add it, but it's a minus, so it's 200 minus 100. So at the end of that period of time, we have £100 in the account. Now that is a cash flow that's getting better. Now what may happen, as I'm going to get a red pen, is you may walk into the exam and you may just see this, particularly on Unit 1 and Unit 2, and then you can say, oh well, that's not a problem because the cash flow is getting better. But the only thing you see is the bottom line on here. You don't see anything else. And you must recognise immediately that that is talking about cash and cash flow. Okay, so the other trick they do is they will take out numbers. So they'll take out this number here, and you've got to work it out. Now in this case, you work that one out because overall in that month we've got 100 quid. 150 quid has gone out, so that number must be 250. Or they will take this number out here. Well, that's fine. We can work it out in two ways because it's minus 200 here, so that must be the opening balance for the next month. It must be minus 200 again, which is the easiest way of doing it. But we got 100, we end up with minus 100, so that number must be minus 200. Or they could give you this number here. They could take this one out here. You've got a net cash flow. So you've got minus 100, but you end up the month with minus 200. So that number there must also be minus 100. So they may test you about the mechanics of a cash flow. Relatively straightforward, but they may give you that sort of question. Now, in terms of Unit 1, they give you certain causes of cash flow problems. In fact, I don't like this very much because the biggest cause, or probably the biggest cause of a cash flow problem, is the amount of money that you need to spend on fixed assets. So when you first have a business, you're going to buy a Chinese restaurant, you may have to spend 50, 60,000 quid on the kitchen. That is going to hit your cash flow. But this is a pretty important one. The fixed assets you will still have at the end of the year. Therefore, the fixed asset will come out of your cash flow, right? But because you still have it at the end of the year, it's not taken off your income statement, your profit and loss account. Anyway, we'll spend a lot of time on that when we look at the difference between cash and profit. So causes of cash flow problems regards this unit is, if we think about Pierre's t-shirts again, there was seasonal demand. Because of seasonal demand, therefore they would have to borrow money at certain times of the year. Also, they were selling their t-shirts on credit, so they weren't getting paid for 3 months, but then they had to pay their suppliers straight away. Overinvestment in fixed assets, I've just spoken about that one here, which is when you buy like a t-shirt making machine that may cost 10,000 quid or something like that, and you've made a mistake in terms of your sales, you've overestimated your sales. So the solutions that you can take out, you can have an overdraft, which is where you borrow money from the bank, or you can sell some fixed assets, maybe sell some of the assets that you own, maybe your house or maybe a couple of cars, or you can sell your assets and then lease them back. So you're selling your assets and hiring them back, or you try and change your suppliers so you pay them later, or you try and buy cheaper goods. But cash is essential to any business, and this is an example of the mechanics of a cash flow. In a second or two, I will create an actual cash flow for you to have a look at, and you'll see how that works. But it's cash in, cash out, net cash flow, opening balance, closing balance. Thank you. This here is a cash flow, and I suppose the big question is, why do you know it's a cash flow? Because many students will see this on the paper and they won't even know what it is. But the reason why we know it's a cash flow is because it's got opening balance on it, and an opening balance will be part of a cash flow. So we look at this and very quickly we can tell, okay, when Pierre first starts out his company, it's got a positive cash flow, no problem. But after this, it's got a negative cash flow almost for the next 2 years before it moves positive again. Now, therefore, we can make the judgment that if Pierre does not borrow money, then his business may well go under. So therefore, what can Pierre do about it? Well, one of the exams question was, should Pierre take out an overdraft? Now, in this case, an overdraft would be the most suitable thing to do, because an overdraft allows you to borrow up to a certain limit. So maybe his overdraft limit may have been £15,000. And the reason why Pierre would want an overdraft is because he doesn't really know how big his overdraft is going to be, and it's going to be varying at all times. So with the big advantage of an overdraft is you only pay for what you need. You don't pay over and above that. Whereas with a loan, you have to borrow, say, £20,000, and then you've got to borrow £20,000. You pay interest on that 20,000 quid. However, he definitely needs a loan or an overdraft, because if Pierre doesn't, then he may well go out of business. And that's the key thing. And very, very few students will use this data, look at it and say, well, he must have an overdraft because he's got a negative cash flow. And that's all you have to take from that information. Now, when you get onto Unit 2, it may just have the words Unit 2. Well, that's Unit 2 paper. Let's think of a company, Jim's Cars. A bit sexist there. I'm assuming obviously that it's to do with cars, therefore they must be male. may well be totally incorrect, and he may have Jim's cars and he may owe £2 million. That's all it will say. Now that is very important data, because you know straight away that that firm has a negative cash flow. And if you have negative cash flow, the firm will have to borrow money, or it'll have to sell shares. It'll have to do something to bring cash into the business. So the business may well actually make a profit. So next line it may down Jim's cars. This one will say cash flow here. And on the next line it may say profit. And it may go £1 million. Right, so it's making £1 million profit, but it's got a £2 million negative cash flow. Now, just because the firm is making £1 million profit doesn't mean it's got £1 million in the bank and therefore can use that profit to pay off that debt. It may not work like that. It may be the case that the business has made, say, sales of 5 million, variable costs 1 million, and fixed costs also 1 million, of say 3 million. So therefore it is in fact making a profit of 1 million. Hopefully you can see it on the camera. But Jim may have gone out and spent £3 million on a fixed asset. Because he spent £3 million on a fixed asset, he will have a negative cash flow. Okay? Anyway, so if you see those numbers in an exam, react to that data. And in this case, it's very simple. You just say, well, it's got negative cash flow, he's going to have to borrow money. Or the business is at risk, or maybe it's not a good time to invest more money into that business right now until he's paid off, until he's got some more cash into that business. Okay? Session today on and I'm going to be doing cash flow, and I want to really show you the difference between cash and profit. Okay, so I created here a cash inflow for the first month. Let's call it January of a small cafe. Quite realistic, really. So it may be the case that the business has got £50,000 worth of loans, so that's money that's come into the business. They made £30,000 worth of sales that month, so the cash in is £80,000. The variable costs are 10,000 quid, the fixed costs are 10,000 quid. The fixed assets though, they've gone out and they spent £300,000 on that business. So that's money that has gone out, so overall £320,000 has gone out. So therefore their net cash flow that month is minus 240,000 quid, which we put into brackets. So we got minus 240,000 quid here. They've got an opening balance, they've got £50,000 cash. So at the end of the month, they got 190,000 minus 190,000 pounds in their account. So quite clearly they need an overdraft or a bank loan. Now in this case here, we can work out the profit. The profit is they made sales of £30,000. You take away the variable costs. Gross profit is 20,000 quid. So in fact, they've got a very high gross margin as well. Their gross margin is 66.6%, which is pretty good. And their net profit is £10,000, so they're making 33.3% net profit. So that's also pretty good. And if you multiply maybe that by 12, they're making £120,000 over the year. And maybe they've invested £300,000 into that business. It's a rate of return of roughly 40%. So that business is actually doing pretty well. However, it's clearly got a negative cash flow. Okay, so therefore the business is at risk unless they borrow money. So the big difference is a business will spend money on fixed assets, but fixed assets do not appear in the income statement, or as I prefer to call it, the profit and loss account. However, depreciation does go into this account, but we won't bother with that as yet. We'll do that a little bit later on in the course. So this is the sort of question that not the question that you'll get, but you'll get a lot of questions based around this sort of idea that where's the business going to find the cash from, but it is in fact making money. The second thing from here is this often appears on a Unit 2 paper, and the business is making money, so that's good, £1.8 million. However, they've got a negative cash balance. That means they've got a negative cash flow, so they've got problems. And in this case, they're owed £2.7 million in bad debts. In this case, obviously, how do you get over the cash flow? Well, quite easy. You make your customers pay up on time, or you may be able to what we call factorize those debts, sell those debts onto a factoring company who will give you cash, which will hopefully then cover that negative cash flow. But you'll find that most businesses, most new businesses, will have a negative cash flow, which is why they need to create a business plan so they can show it to friends or family, or perhaps give it to the bank manager from there. Okay, but in this case, this is an example. I'm trying to show you the difference between cash and profit, and this is a question from a Unit 2 paper. Okay, thank you.